The mystical truths in religions East and West are brought to light again and made relevant for our time by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and spiritual teacher.
We left off yesterday talking about Morya's ideas for government. Could you tell us a bit more about those?
You know, the closeness of the American people to Morya is nowhere more evident than in their intense concern for government, which has been from the very beginning the participation of all people. Morya has written this document that I think is so marvelous, a white paper from the Darjeeling Council Table. And in this white paper, he proceeds to analyze what our attitude should be toward government, because government and its correct functioning is the direct manifestation of our dedication to the will of God. Government is the will of people, of the governed by their representatives, and without this we cannot proceed on the path of true religion or true science. He says, so many are the mysteries of life, so many are the powers of love, yet the dust seems to be more their choice than the destiny God ordained. Now there is a remnant, and the remnant is one of hope, and these are responsive hearts. But the great cosmic net must reach into the deep and find them out. We must draw many to the higher pilaster. We must amplify the filaments of light in the body bulbs of those who are the true seed of God. We must protect and direct. Yet the veil of obscurity is very, very heavy. While man's concern for his ecology mounts, what shall I say is happening to the soul within? The moral standard, recognition of the plane of spirit, listening to the music of the stars and the spheres, creating that tie of cosmic identity, which is the fort of the will of God. These are the strong banners we raise. You'll remember, Doug, that Morya is our own personal guru. He is the ascended master who founded the Summit Lighthouse. He says, now we compliment those who have assisted in the expansion of the light beams from the Summit Lighthouse, those who perceive our reality standing behind the printed word, those who understand that the messengers and staff are glad servants, a veil of flesh through which we indicate strands of the holy pattern. Turning his attention to the world scene, Morya wrote, noting the widening schisms, the deliberately maneuvered divisions being created through the dichotomies of mind and spirit in the total world order today, it is my desire to speak from our level concerning our viewpoint and our intent. Those who would set nation against nation, those who would set people against people, those who would point the accusing finger of one religion at another, by so doing create that fracture in consciousness which is a destructive, negative spiral. May I then set forth, so that all may hear me once and for all, the policy of the Summit Lighthouse, sponsored by the Great White Brotherhood. As the brother of humble service who assisted in the pangs of birth, may I now order the promulgation of our statement of policy, and see that this shall reflect our thoughts both now and in the future. It is well known that there are in the world millions who are labeled left-wing. There are other millions labeled right-wing. There are others who choose, in some degree of human pride I might add, the position of the middle of the road. May I say that we do not espouse any of these causes, and may I tell you why. This, to me, was the most refreshing aspect of Morya's consciousness when I encountered him. I found that I could be free to support the will of God anywhere in the political spectrum. I didn't have to be right wing, left wing, middle of the road. I could see the will of God and be a chela of this guru, and yet be directly involved with government in America and in every nation. So Morya, to me, is the great liberator of my soul from partisan politics. And being a political science major, I found this to be a wonderful solution to a difficult problem. He writes, The magnitude of cosmic Christ's service is such that we cannot identify ourselves or our movement with one confined to a secular slice of opportunism. Those who desire to sell many copies of their magazine espouse controversial subjects, knowing that half of the people in the world will probably subscribe to their view. They play the percentages, and to them life is a wheel of roulette. From our level, we can scarcely engage in such conduct. We choose then not to favor any of these positions, but rather to recognize the whole spectrum from right to left, including the middle of the road, as the valley of reality where truth may appear mingled with error. Ours is not to create division, and the Summit Lighthouse, our organization, reflects those goals which are sound and strengthening to the human spirit. May I say in all cosmic honor that there are virtuous causes across the whole range of human endeavor, but there are many that are unvirtuous, unrighteous, deceptive, and wrongly motivated. We cannot identify with any, for our purpose is not to be popular, but to be truthful and to embrace those spiritual causes which will enable the soul itself to expand its life. I have not denied that the poor, as Jesus said, are with you always. I have not denied man's right to fulfill those social needs which to some have become a way of spiritual service. Likewise, we clearly see that among the traditions of men there are many of virtue, albeit sometimes sagging, that ought to be upheld. But where shall we position the timbers? We cannot identify with the right or the left, and we cannot identify with the middle of the road. I think then we see that the position of the ascended masters is not to ratify any human position, not to tell us that we are right, but to tell us to be wed to truth rather than personalities, platforms, because these always represent a mingling of truth and error. And what we must strive to do is to isolate truth and then champion it wherever it is found. And since all men and women have a creative potential to bring forth an element of God, then we should test what is brought forth by the standard of the will of God, which we all have within us. And as God gives us the wisdom and the gift of vision to see and to know that will.
How do we do that?
Well, it is always by the reconsecration of our day and our life to that will, calling to God, kneeling in very intense prayer before we go to sleep at night, that God will realign our consciousness, and we should dedicate the next day to God every night. And then while we sleep, God will purify our souls, purify our motives, give us solutions to problems. We tune into the cosmic mind, which is just like a fantastic cosmic computer. It releases us through the night all that we need to deal with the challenges of the coming day, especially should our leaders and representatives realize that they have a supreme duty to meditate upon this will of God and to be untied even to their own personal preferences and unbound by political commitments, and be bound solely by and to this will of God, which will surely come forth and inspire consciousness if we open ourselves to it.
Do the masters influence our leaders?
Morya has kind of chuckled when he has told us of the many leaders that he has worked through, perhaps leaders that we would not particularly vote for, but he says whoever is in office, we must work with. He says spiritual knowledge is the highest knowledge and takes into account the total compass of the brotherhood of man. For example, when we make a pronouncement that seems to sanction one or the other, and as I've said before, the garment of righteousness must run the whole spectrum, we find ourselves being labeled, and our outer voice of cosmic reason, the Summit Lighthouse, being labeled also. The choice we make then is to render the greatest service to all men and women upon the planet, wherever they appear on the social scale, from the poorest to the wealthiest, from the weakest to the strongest, from the most unspiritual to the most spiritual, from the foolish to the wise. We must serve them all. And when Morya says we, he's talking about the Darjeeling Council and all of the ascended masters. And he says, unless we do, we have fallen short of our divine office. When human reform is needed, Let us be about our Father's business, but let us put the brakes on those unfortunate situations which literally tear from man the vital energies of his life, leaving him a profitless servant.
Have the Masters had a great deal to do with the development of this country?
The Masters, through St. Germain, have sponsored America to be a pilot nation for the Republican form of government, for representative government, according to the inner path of initiation, whereby those who have had the greatest attainment in the Christ consciousness would rise to the position of being not simply political figures, but statesmen and great examples to the people of virtue, and the great virtues not only of religious leaders of the past, but of Socrates and Plato and the great philosophers and scientists, integrity being one's determination to be wed to a cause with nobility, love, purity, and so forth. This is what we need in America and in every nation today, and of course, the Ascended Masters do sponsor every nation as the leaders of the nations are responsive to their vibrations.
Then I gather that the resemblance between the Republican form of government and hierarchy, as you describe it, is no coincidence.
It is not a coincidence, but you know, Morya has said it really doesn't matter what the form of government. Any form of government can work when the basic principle of the integrity of the soul and the soul's relationship to God is maintained, and when the rulers, be it the single enlightened despot or a committee or a larger group or the people themselves, when the governing body considers its supreme obligation to safeguard the individual's right to become one with God.
Thank you very much.
This is a presentation of the Summit Lighthouse, an international spiritual organization dedicated to universal enlightenment. Founded in 1958, the Summit Lighthouse is a beacon of truth to thousands worldwide and a leader in New Thought spirituality.